What a performance by the Ohio State Buckeyes in Happy Valley on Saturday afternoon. An incredible win. The defense played outstanding football, never gave up a touchdown. And what a statement by the Ohio State offense. After that defense makes a goal line stand, the offense runs right down Penn State's throat to ice the game in an impressive 20-13 victory. We got lots to talk about on our live reaction post-game show. Buckeyes 20, Penn State 13.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Buckeye Breakdown podcast post-game show after Ohio State knocks out the Penn State Nittany Lions 20-13 in a really, really impressive game on so many fronts for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm Brendan Gulick alongside former Buckeye offensive lineman Kevin Woidke. And Kevin, I don't know that there's ever been a show that we lead off talking about offensive line play, but the fact that you were a Buckeye offensive lineman and that was the talking point all week. Could Ohio State's offensive line figure it out? Could they figure out left tackle and give Will Howard a fighting chance? Give the run game a chance? What an unbelievable performance from that group.
Great time. I mean, I'm currently protecting this stream because I got a dog next to me I'm trying to keep from barking. But, I mean, it was unreal. I think that if I'm going to critique one thing, I think they could have given Donovan a little more help, given some chip blocks on Carter. I mean, you knew he was going to ruin. I think is it Carter? Am I blanking?
Yeah, Bill Carter. Yeah.
You knew he was going to ruin the game. Like, you knew there was going to be some plays where he came in and made an unreal play, but like it never seemed like they gave Donovan like a hand there. He just. I mean, look, Carter's ridiculous. He's a top 10 right.
And he had 2 sacks. I actually thought that most of the game that they gave Donovan enough help. It just maybe magnified the other way on those 2 sacks. But I loved the scheme today from Chip Kelly.
I thought it was good. I just think like both those sacks, you had Travion Henderson on both the plays lined up the other way on the other side of the quarterback, and then he leaked out for a pass. I'm like, why not have him line up on the opposite side? Give Donovan help if he needs it, and if he doesn't need it, then you leak out for a pass. I mean,
Sure.
It can't. That was my only critique. Other than that, I think they used it perfectly. I think they ran the ball really, really well. I loved Hinsman in there at guard. I mean, he's a little bit more seasoned than Luke Montgomery, but I think that they might have found their groove with. I mean, this offensive line is being held together by duct tape and plaster. But I'll be honest. I mean, it looks like a pretty formed wall to me.
And listen, Donovan Jackson is an All-American guard, and he's a really, really good guard. He's clearly not a left tackle. I thought he played really well today. There were clearly 2 instances that he gave up sacks. I thought maybe those were like the 2 chances that Chip Kelly was trying to say, okay, let's see if this can work one-on-one, and let's try to do something else. Over the course of a 64-play offensive performance for the day, I think you have to take a couple chances. They bit him, but ultimately, for Ohio State to close the game after that goal line stand and for the second week in a row, keep a team out of the end zone there, at the end of the game like that, and then run the next 11 plays for 58 yards, all on the ground, right down the middle of the field against Penn State, doing it with Quinshawn, doing it with Travion, and then obviously Will Howard gets involved today in the run game, and I thought that was super important. Howard ran the ball 12 times today for 24 yards. Judkins, 14 for 95. Henderson had 10 carries for 54. Those 3 guys did a really good job. I loved Chip Kelly's play calling today. I thought it was his best game as the Ohio State offensive coordinator.
I agree. I think that first Mbuka touchdown was a phenomenal Chip Kelly call.
Oh, yeah.
I also am mesmerized by that 4th down call. I mean, I couldn't see who caught it. I was at a bar watching the game, so it was a little dicey.
Jelani Thurman.
Who was it?
Jelani Thurman.
Jelani bobbled it for 5 yards where no one was touching him, and then secured the catch while I was getting hit by 2 guys. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like an M. Night Shyamalan turnaround. But I mean, it was fantastic. I think that, obviously I'm still running a little high. It was a fun game. I'm ecstatic, but I think the offensive line played well. And I think that, the way, like you said, Chip Kelly called that game, I think we could have won by 2 more touchdowns. If Will Howard doesn't fumble that ball out of the end zone, and if Jeremiah Smith doesn't stop running on that one drive, I mean, we kick a field goal on it, but like, if he doesn't stop running on that pass, which was tough, he went out with one hand because he didn't think he could get there with 2. He probably could have gotten there with 2, but he would have been down at the 6 because he would have had to dive for it. But I just think, with Will Howard's tendency all year was a little bit on the underthrow, so I get where Jeremiah Smith was coming from, but that was maybe Will Howard's best pass of the game.
I actually thought he lost it in the sun, and you could literally Will Howard made the comment about, he dropped an F-bomb. He's like bleeping sun. Like, he looked at Jeremiah. He's like, if I throw him the ball, it's going to be caught. There's no reason he's not going to catch the ball. He catches everything. I don't know exactly what happened. He definitely cut off some of that route.
Mm-hmm.
Really, for sure, that was a bit frustrating. Look, Troy Smith tweeted at halftime that he wanted to see Julian Sayin in the game. And admittedly, I was kind of like, I kind of understand that, but I disagreed. The argument was, well, hey, Will Howard cost us 14 points. He fumbled through the end zone and he threw the pick 6. And ultimately, like, I get that. I actually felt like for those mistakes, for what they were, I just thought it was pretty tough luck. The pick 6, to me, that I thought that was a brilliant read defensively. Emeka ran a little bit of an out route where essentially he was trying to cut off the vision of the defensive back as Jeremiah ran underneath it. The defensive back read it right away, and he just jumped the route. And it was such a quick play. There really is no read there for Will. It's you see that pre-snap, you throw it. The guy made the play. That's fine. The fumble, I mean, look, there's no excuse, right? You can't fumble. But the way that ball was punched out and hit him on the inside of the thigh with his leg going forward, where it hits it through the end zone like that, it's a crappy break. But I didn't watch that first half and think, oh, man, Will Howard's playing losing football. Like, I never went quite that far. And actually, I thought he showed some pretty impressive resiliency, down 10-0, to then go out there and win a game 20-13. Well, that was really impressive.
I agree. You obviously weren't at the bar I was at because everyone else was calling for Will Howard's head. But I agree with that. I agree with the fact that I think he played a good first half. I think, that fumble's tough. I mean, he looked like Alexander Graham Bell out there telegraphing that first pick 6. But, I mean, that's just that's him being, I mean, he obviously didn't have, he had a good game. And that's the other thing. He had a decent game against Oregon.
Yeah.
I think there was a look ahead game last week. They looked past Nebraska thinking, oh, this is Nebraska. They aren't really anything. And that's what led to this game. I think that, and this is all opinion, don't quote me on any of this. But I think that, Will Howard played phenomenally. I wasn't ready to pull the ripcord like everybody else was. I mean, and to be honest, Julian Sayin might not have been the next one in. They might have put in Devin Brown.
I would have assumed Devin Brown would have gone next.
That's what I would have thought too. But I mean, if you look at it, the offensive line was a little bit, it was a shuffle. I mean, it was like 3-card Monty out there for most of the season, but they got it figured out. It seemed like towards the end of the game. I think this is the offensive line we're going to see for the rest of the year. I think they played well. They were obviously a little shaky on the first couple drives. We couldn't really run the ball. But then you saw Quinshawn and Travion, and I don't know who said on the sideline, but it's like, hey, run through these arm tackles. Like, you guys are stronger than this. And they started doing that as the game went on. But Will showing, I think the biggest thing of Will Howard versus Julian Sayin or versus any other backup there is he took that slide at the end of the game, which I don't think any other quarterback on our roster does that. He is a true senior. He pulled a Nick Chubb, went down and goes, I don't need a touchdown. I'm going to take a knee and get out of here with a win and, fly back from Happy Valley because we have a plane that fits on the airline. Oh, sorry about that. Didn't know that was going to happen. and fly back on the airline that fits on their tarmac, and then go celebrate in Columbus tonight. Because that's the beauty of a noon game where it's a huge game, and you're home by 9 o'clock. That's perfect time to go out on High Street. I mean, that's the lay of the land right there.
I totally agree with you with the being mentally in that moment. When he slid at the end of the game, I literally said out loud, yes, like that is absolutely the right decision. It speaks, for me, it speaks to Will Howard's character and his leadership. He has never been a me guy since he walked into that building. And he made it clear when he transferred to Ohio State, he basically had two options. He was either coming to Columbus or he was going to enter the NFL draft. And he wanted to come be a Buckeye because he wanted to keep developing. And he said, I believe in this roster. I think we can go win a national championship. You need a guy that is a we guy. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Will Howard is a CJ Stroud or a Justin Fields. But we are seeing time and again where he is able to make some really, really good plays. He's not the best quarterback in college football. Ohio State needs really good quarterback play, and they need a guy that can understand the moment. And I'm not saying even that Kyle McCord couldn't do that, because quite frankly, Kyle McCord, I think back to like the Notre Dame game. This is certainly the biggest win for me anyways, since that Notre Dame game. Kyle McCord had some moments where he showed some really good things too. Look, Michigan's really down, okay? And they're probably going to get embarrassed by Oregon this afternoon because their top two corners are out. I have no idea what exactly that game is going to look like in a few weeks. And in Ohio State football lore, you're measured by what you do in the rivalry game. So if Will Howard really wants to cement himself as a guy for this fan base that everybody will always adore, he's got to win that game. And I know people are hammering him for the way the Oregon game ended, but I think this kid has played really, really good football. And the two biggest question marks, Kevin, coming into this season, in what felt like a 3-game season, let's call it for what it is. Nobody else cares about the other games. It's how do you play against Oregon? How do you play against Penn State? How do you play against Michigan? And right now they have a 1-point loss on the road against the number 1 team in the country. They just went into Happy Valley in front of the largest crowd in the history of Penn State football, in the second biggest stadium in the country. And they never let them score a touchdown. They beat them 20-13. And then you're going to have to go do it against Michigan at the end of the year with, by the way, an Indiana team that's absolutely terrific the week before that. My point is, you wanted to know, can your quarterback play? Can your offensive line play? And can you win those 3 games? And right now, I think the Buckeyes today, let everybody take a big, deep breath, because all of a sudden those national championship hopes feel realistic again. After last week, there were a lot of people looking around going, what did we just watch against Nebraska? Was it just a classic trap game, or is the depth that big of a problem? And I think today a lot of those questions were answered.
I agree. And truth be told, I think this is the best outcome other than a win. I think this is kind of a win-win for Penn State, because they're probably going to win the rest of their games. They're going to be a one loss. They're going to be a one loss by a score to Ohio State, who, I mean, if everything goes accordingly, it'll be Ohio State versus Oregon in the Big Ten championship. And unless Oregon somehow loses 3 games in a row, which I don't foresee happening.
No.
And then you're looking at it from the outside in. I think Penn State's a top 7 seed in the CFP. If they win all the games they're supposed to, and their only loss is to Big Ten champion Ohio State, or I think they could be ranked even higher than Ohio State at the end of the year based on their record alone, if we somehow drop to Oregon, which I don't foresee happening, because that was a very close game that if he slides a half a second earlier is a different outcome. But that's kind of the difference. I just think that, Penn State, it's a very good football team. I said it all week. I said it with Anthony. It was going to come down to our defense, and they showed up on that last drive. They've been bend, don't break, and I have been critiquing them for their bend, don't break mentality all year. I think critiquing is the correct term. They've just done it against Marshall. They've done it against teams that aren't that good, but then it's like, okay, they do it against Penn State, and it's like, okay, outside the Oregon game, this looks like a Brian Bosworth type defense. I mean,
Listen,
that's just.
I mean, to further bolster your point, how about the play of Caden McDonald? Tyleik Williams gets hurt in a critical point of the game. Not to mention, Tyleik Williams is easily your best interior defensive lineman. And you can make a case right now that he's been at least as valuable, if not more, than Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. So for him to go out of that game, McDonald to come in, and where Penn State, 3 times in a row tried to like rugby scrum it into the end zone, you better have defensive tackles that can rise to the occasion in that moment. And Ty Hamilton has been really solid this year. He's not as good as Tyleik Williams. Caden McDonald, I thought, was unreal in that goal line stand and gave the rest of the unit a chance to try and meet the ball carrier, and they never let him in.
I agree, because, you look at Caden McDonald, and he was good last year. He was one of the highest rated players on college football 2025 coming into the season. I mean, it was him and Tyleik Williams on that interior line as the 2 starters. And he's kind of had an up and down year, but I truly think that, going forward, this is a guy who you can lean on. I mean, Ty Hamilton's had a great year, but if the fact that he kind of emerged is huge, because now you can rotate him. You can feel confident having one of the 2 out of 3 guys in there at D line, and it's at the interior defensive line. And the one thing I'm going to say is I think Tyleik Williams is way more valuable to this D line than Sawyer and JTT this year, at least. Like, I'm looking at it this year, just look at the stats, look at how they're playing. I mean, Tyleik is the heart. It's Tyleik in the front, and then it's obviously Sonny Styles and Cody Simon are great at linebacker. They're solid. And then Caleb at the back end, because Caleb had some unbelievable tackles on maybe Penn State's best player, Tyler Warren, today. Yeah. that just shut him down. Tyler Warren had a phenomenal 1 drive, but the flip side of it was he wasn't there for the remaining, I don't know, they played 14 drives. The other 13, and I might be way overselling how many drives they had, but that's just the reality situation is Tyler Warren was a non-factor at the
huge chunk of the game.
And a phenomenal switch there, because they tried to get us on that last touchdown, on that last 4th and goal. One, I don't know why they Pete Carrolled it and threw it instead of running the ball. But the other side of it was, I mean, there was a phenomenal switch by Lathan Ransom, and I believe it was Igbinosa or Denzel Burke, where Lathan switched on to Tyler Warren, who was coming out there trying to pick it, and Lathan just goes, "No, I'm switching." And he came in with the receiver and then went out with Tyler Warren and shut him down, and then they tried to throw over the middle into 6-person coverage. Excuse me. That was one of the best defensive stands I've seen at Ohio State since the Wisconsin game.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, listen, for me, the reason the defense was so impressive today is because it wasn't just one guy playing well. I'm not going to tell you that every guy had a perfect game.
No.
Jack Sawyer early in the game can't sack Drew Aller, lets a 19-yard play happen, but then kind of gives himself some retribution on that opening drive field goal. He has a great pass rush that forces an incomplete pass because Aller can't really step in to throw. JT Tuimoloau, I thought, had a good game. Certainly wasn't what he had the last time he was in Happy Valley, but he comes up with a sack. Cody Simon played really sound football, had a great sack on a really creative blitz scheme where Jack Sawyer dropped into coverage and Cody delayed up the middle. Sonny Styles, rock solid day. And even the things that won't show up in a stat sheet. For example, in the first half, there was a play, it was late second quarter, where Bo Pribula was running toward what was the near sideline on the TV, and he was trying to invite Styles to like bite on a pitch fake so he could cut it up. Sonny stayed sound, forced into the outside, small gain. Plays like that. Caden Curry had a really good effort at defensive end in some limited action today. Obviously, the interception from IGB in the end zone was a bit lucky in how it happened, but also really impressive. Caleb Downs is the best safety I've seen in college football in a while. I mean, he is ridiculous. The kid is everywhere. I just feel like Caleb Downs never makes a mistake. When you add all of these things together, and the fact that Ohio State only had 2 penalties for 15 yards the whole day, I realized they had a third that was picked up on what was a completed pass in the end of that first half. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot. So there's just this piece of this of like, okay, look, these guys all came back on defense, Kev, because they want to win a national title. They're basically saying we don't have any other choice. Like, we're here to try to win a natty. And to go out in a game like this, where there was a lot of negative energy around social media, a lot of people talking not quite as positively about this team outside the Woody, for those guys to just lock in and go stuff Penn State the way they did, man, I thought that was really, really impressive.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, they were the best. People were talking about them as the best defense to start the season, obviously on paper, and then up until this point, there were a billion question marks about them. And I think that against the number 4 team in the country, after maybe one of your worst performances against Oregon as a defense, you come back and you stand them up. You do that bend don't break. I would love to see the numbers of most times the team has entered the red zone without scoring a touchdown for a season, because it is up there for this Ohio State defense.
Sure.
I think that, you started off the year a little bit. You had Cody Simon that was hurt for the beginning of the year and let it be hurt or a little banged up. They realized they didn't need him, so they let him sit out. But, I mean, Caleb Downs, Troy Polamalu, Charles Woodson, you're talking about some of the best safety play in college football history, and he is one of them. He is like an Ed Reed. He is like a Charles Woodson, where I hate to give credit where they can accept it. But he runs that defense. They talk about how he preps like a pro, and then Jeremiah Smith on the other side preps like a pro. And when you have these guys for this year plus next year, and then Jeremiah Smith for another year on top of that, I'm just so excited. These guys they're presenting themselves as leaders. They're presenting themselves as ball players, and we have 2 years worth of them. Like, I think that it is phenomenal for a Julian Sand, who will be our quarterback next year, to have both these guys in there. Most likely our quarterback next year. We'll see what happens. You got Aaron Nolan in the mix. You got Lincoln in the mix. But, that's where I'm like, seeing these guys establish themselves on the biggest stage as younger guys is huge for the progression of the team.
Let me ask you this. So the difference on the scoreboard was 7 points, right? And there's a lot of little things that can get magnified in a game like this. I don't know that I feel that this was the difference, but Penn State had Ohio State stopped on a 3rd down, and I forget which defensive back it was that walked over top of the Ohio State receiver, commits an unsportsmanlike foul on a 3rd down stop, extends the drive, and the Buckeyes went down and scored. So I think there's also an element of, like, you hear Ryan Day say things to the effect of, hey, we need to play disciplined football but be violent. And there is like a razor thin fine line in being able to do that. And Ohio State's walking that line really well right now. And I can't say that they've done that every game all year, but on a day where you cannot afford self-inflicted wounds, I thought Ohio State did. I mean, they never had a holding call all game, right? They were I shouldn't say never. They were extremely rarely working behind the chains. I'd have to dive deep into the stats, but I don't know that they had many 2nd and longs, if any, throughout the day. I mean, it was productive 1st down. Chip Kelly had different uses of formations. I would argue, when you go back and look at the tape, that Donovan Jackson more often than not had a tight end and or an H-back with him to help on that side. The touchdown that Ohio State scored when the 25-yard pass to Emeka Egbuka, I mean, that could be one of the most creative play calls that Chip Kelly's had since he came to Columbus. I mean, on 2nd and 5, you shift into a heavy run formation and set up misdirection play action to have Will set, throw back across his body. Emeka could not have been any more wide open. For football junkies watching that play, you sit there and go, that was freaking brilliant. And Penn State, never saw that coming. I also thought, speaking of discipline, the couple of times that, Penn State tried to flank their whole offensive line out to the sideline to just see if the defense could handle it. They did. They didn't, they didn't put themselves in vulnerable positions against some goofy sets, or when 71 flanked out, down on the goal line to then motion in and try to be a blocking back. I just thought Ohio State defensively was really prepared for this game.
I agree. I think that Egbuka touchdown, the one thing that I want to touch on is how much faith they have in their offensive line, because that's a slow developing play. And you
Yeah.
got to hold up that defensive line for long enough so that Mbeka can get across.
Right.
And Mbuka can get across. The other thing is, I mean, nothing's better than when two defenders block themselves. And it wasn't like it was a receiver running them into each other. They ran into each other clean on their own. And then, he shot out the other end, and it was a walk-in touchdown. I think James Franklin is going to go back and watch this film, and he's going to set up a play where we didn't honor that tackle out in the receiver spot. If they would have snapped the ball and thrown it to him, he had a no problem walk-in touchdown.
I was sitting there looking at the game going,
exactly.
Oh, they're banking so hard on that guy not catching a touchdown pass.
I was looking at it, I'm like, are we going to cover him? We're not. Oh, thank God it's coming in motion. Like, I was deathly afraid they were going to snap the ball and throw it to him out because he was off the line of scrimmage. He was in the backfield. He was an eligible receiver. Like, that threw me for a loop. I think James Franklin's going to kick himself because he's like, why didn't we do it? Hindsight's 2020. He's like, why didn't we do this? And I think if Drew Aller's a little bit older, he tells 71 in the huddle before that play, if they don't cover you, run a fade, I'm throwing you the ball.
Yeah. Penn State might be one of the best teams in the country that just can't seem to win the big game. I mean, these numbers are ridiculous. This comes from the CBS Sports research team. Penn State is 1-23 since 2000 against top 5 teams. They are 1-13 against AP top 5 teams under James Franklin. And they've now lost 8 in a row to Ohio State. And most of those 8 games have been pretty competitive. I don't understand how they can't seem to get it done in big moments, because there are so many instances where I think Penn State is good enough to win those games. And today, like, there's not a huge separation between these two teams. In the same way you walk away from the Ohio State-Oregon game going, those are two of the best teams in the country for sure. Like, Penn State, to me, shouldn't tumble in the rankings just because they lost this game at home by a touchdown. I think they are certainly, to your point earlier, a top 17 in the country. They're better than Alabama right now.
100%.
They might be better than Georgia, which is a wild thing to say for people that aren't paying attention to like actual football. You just want to like look at rankings or think of program reputation. This is a really, really good Penn State team, but Ohio State played the way that they should play. I didn't expect them to come out with that kind of offensive line performance after what we saw last week. I just didn't think they had it. I didn't think that Ohio State was going to have the right solution at left guard and at left tackle today the way they did. I'm really, really impressed by that. And if I'm Penn State, season is far from over. Obviously, 12 teams get in the playoffs. They have a realistic shot to go out and make a serious run in the CFP.
I agree. I mean, they're a very, 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 very good team this year, and I think you don't sew it up and call the season because, like I said, it's very realistic they win the rest of their games. And if you're telling me a Power 4, because there's no longer a Power 5, even though I'd love to see Oregon State or Washington State sneak in as the only Pac-12 team. Excuse me. I mean, that you have one loss going into that, you're going to be a high seed. Yeah. I think that, James Franklin, when you go back and look at this, go back and look at that stat. I think that one win, and I said this in our Thursday show, was the Ohio State one where they blocked the field goal.
Yep.
I mean, that's just what it was. We were undefeated until that point. We were undefeated until that point. I broke my wrist. They take me out, and then they block it over that spot, but whatever. We'll deal with that.
I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. Clearly,
I appreciate it. But like all those ones are against Ohio State one time, and my buddy Cody Griffin, who a friend of mine from Chicago, he's a huge Penn State fan, and after Oregon beat us, he looked at me just as upset as I was because he's like, "Oh my, you guys are going to bring your A game against us." It's like, and he goes, "We can't make a mistake," and you know what? They did. You touched on it earlier. That pass interference call flipped the game. Or the unsportsmanlike conduct call flipped the game because then we got the ball, scored a touchdown, and now it's 10-7 or 10-10 at that point. I can't remember. No, it was 10-7. We scored the touchdown, and then it was 10-7.
Yeah.
It's crazy because they had us stopped. And just like it seemed like this game just kept flipping back and forth, but it was. I mean, it was one of my favorite. It was one of my favorite Ohio State games I've watched as a spectator in a long time.
Well, I mean, listen, man, to go to Penn State in front of the biggest crowd they've ever had in a game that had all of this hype and the black cloud that seemed to be hanging over Ohio State externally, to spot Penn State 10 points was not comfortable. Even though I thought Ohio State did a pretty good job of holding them to a field goal on that opening drive, to throw a pick six like that early in the game, you're digging yourself a pretty tough hole. And the way they responded immediately on that next drive was impressive, and then added to it with a touchdown again. You know, Penn State, its first couple drives, they obviously kicked the field goal the opening drive. They went 3 and out back-to-back drives after that. And Ohio State quickly settled things down and got back into rhythm. Let's go over a couple of numbers here just so folks can know what happened for anybody that maybe hasn't seen this. Buckeyes, 358 yards of total offense, and they were pretty well distributed. 182 through the air, 176 on the ground. Penn State, 270 yards of total offense. The Buckeyes outgained them by about 80 yards, 150 on the through the air, 120 on the ground. Drew Aller was 12 of 20 in the game for a $146 and an interception. Will Howard was 16 of 24 for 182, 2 touchdowns, and the INT, and of course he lost the fumble. Ohio State way better on third downs today. How often did we hear Ryan Day talk about being 1 of 10 against Nebraska last week? Bucks were 6 of 12 on third downs today, had 21 total first downs. Penn State 3 of 11 on third down. They had 15 first downs in the game. I don't think there was a flag thrown the entire second half. I know Penn State had 5 penalties for 45 yards in the first half. That's what they finished at. The Buckeyes only had 2 accepted penalties for 15 yards in the game. They had a third foul that was picked up. And by the way, I think there's something to be said for being grateful for replay in this game, because we had at least 2, maybe 3 instances where replay was used. It was 3, right? The Will Howard completed pass that was actually a sack because his knee was down, the fumble through the end zone, and what they ruled on the field was a fumble and overturned to an incomplete pass on that Judkins catch on the right side. You need replay to be accurate. Oh, a 4th play, right? IGB interception in the end zone. There's 4 plays where replay was right on top of it and got the call right. And a lot of times I think people want to overly criticize how replay can stop the game and whatnot, but they ultimately got it right, and that was really important.
There was actually 5, Brendan. The 5th was that pass that Will Aller threw a low pass in the first half, and the receiver went down to catch it, and it was a 3rd and 7 pass,
right,
or 2nd and 7, and he dropped it, and replay helped us.
They ruled it complete, and then replay overturned it. You're right.
I was sitting next to 2. I got my buddy Brendan, who was the angel on one shoulder, Cleveland guy, and my buddy Kevin, both friends from Ohio State. Devil on the right. Buddy Kevin, Cincinnati fan, not the greatest season for both baseball and football so far. My buddy Brendan, Cleveland guy. Brendan had all the positivity. Me and Kevin were on the other side the entire time. It was just we were trying to keep, we got to keep them honest. We can't always be happy all the time, but Brendan goes, I don't know, it was a catch. And then I go, what? And then they reviewed it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. And he was, and that was the one that I think was another one that kind of turned over. And it was like, wow.
I really forgot about that because it didn't feel like a game-changing play, but it definitely was.
Yeah.
I mentioned it earlier. Judkins, Henderson, and Howard basically had all but 3 of the rushing yards for Ohio State as a team. J.J. Smith, 4 catches for 55 yards. Abuka, 3 for 31 and a touchdown. Brandon Innes, a nice day, scored 2 catches for 33 yards. Carnell Tate, 2 catches for 15 yards. Jelani Thurman had the huge 4th down catch that was eventually a 19-yard gain. And Travion Henderson had a 20-yard catch as well. Nick Singleton, how about this? In the first half, Penn State did not complete a single pass to a receiver. All 5 completions in the first half were to Singleton out of the backfield. He finished with 6 catches for 54 yards. He also had 6 carries for 15 yards. Warren ran the ball 3 times for 47, obviously had the 33-yard run late in the game. Allard, 10 carries for 31. Katron Allen had 12 carries for 27. So statistically not a game where there were big gaudy numbers. It was the kind of game that you went into it going like, hey, whoever controls the line of scrimmage is probably going to have a pretty good chance to get this thing done, and whoever turns the ball over less. And ultimately, Ohio State actually finished the game with 1 more turnover because they lost the fumble and each guy threw a pick. But the Bucks were able to come up with the huge defensive stand late, and they got it done.
They did. And this was a Big Ten battle, and they came through. I think this could have been a much different ball game if a couple passes go our way, but we had every call go our way from the officiating side, and I think that's kind of it, truthfully, and I think that was the difference maker. And I think that I'm just happy we got out there with a win, solid 7-point win.
Yeah, and listen, it's the kind of win for me that like sets the tone for what is to come. Right, you're going to play two opponents the next couple weeks that you're probably going to rock. Purdue is not good. And Northwestern is barely better. I know they're playing each other today. I don't remember what the score was of that game, but those two opponents really you shouldn't have a problem with. The Northwestern game could be fun. Obviously they're playing at Wrigley Field. And then you've got an Indiana team that's got everything to prove. And I'd be surprised, frankly, if Indiana loses before that. Indiana, I think, is Michigan State and Michigan the next couple of weeks before they play Ohio State. And I think the Hoosiers are for real. I really, really do. I think they're really good. That's going to be an awesome game on November 22nd. And then you've got the rivalry game. And right now, Ohio State, I think the betting lines are like a 3-touchdown favorite over Michigan. I don't know where it'll be when we get to that point, but I think Ohio State is way better than Michigan on paper. You got to go prove it when you actually strap up and go play. But this is the kind of game for me that tells Ohio State, hey, we handled the adversity and the doubt and the negative energy around what we did last week. We got through the trap game with a win, fixed the offensive line. It's not perfect. They surely showed a good solution against a really high-quality team. They got some veteran, gutsy leadership from a quarterback who got off to a rocky start, steadied the ship, kept the team in the game, and they leaned on a defense that knows they are good enough to win a national championship. And now everybody's going to be talking about Ohio State again is, okay, hey, that game against Nebraska, banged up offensive line, didn't have the right focus because Nebraska lost by 50 the week before. They just went and proved it on the road in certainly one of the 2 or 3 toughest environments in the country. This team looks like they could win a national championship.
I agree. Couldn't agree more.
All right. Kevin agrees. He just keeps agreeing with me. That's great.
You've made a lot of really good points today.
You're really, really smart. I love the way you think.
It's crazy.
Oh, man. Let's leave with this. What was was there a surprise for you today? Was there something that caught you off guard?
I'm surprised G. Scott didn't score a touchdown, honestly. No, I think the surprise for me.
For anybody that doesn't watch a show regularly, Kevin's the biggest G. Scott. Kevin might be a bigger G. Scott fan than G. Scott's family, and that's fine.
I love G. Scott.
I love G. Scott.
I haven't bought an Ohio State jersey since I played there, but I might buy a G. Scott jersey. I was expecting him to make a catch like Marcus Baugh did in 2017. I was waiting for it. I would have gone nuts. You would have seen me on every social media outlet going crazy at the bar I was at. But it was, I think, my biggest, not surprise, but maybe surprise. I think Egbinosa played a phenomenal game. I think he let up one big pass. But other than that, he had a great defensive pass. He had great defensive breakup on a pass in the first quarter, second quarter maybe. I think he played out of his mind today, and I'm very, very happy we have him on our team.
I think my biggest surprise is twofold. It's I'm a little surprised the offensive line situation worked out as well as it seemed to. Again, I'm not saying that Donovan Jackson is suddenly an All-American left tackle. He's not. But he is a plenty viable solution when he got a little help over there. And Carson Hinsman played really well at left guard. I am way less concerned about the left side of the offensive line than I was 7 days ago. So that was pleasant. For me, the bigger actual surprise, though, is Lathan Ransom, because it started to sound like this week, as Ryan Day alluded to, no, he's going to play. He's good. From what we were kind of hearing out of the Woody, it didn't really sound like Lathan Ransom was going to be rocking and rolling. And I thought he had a really solid game. I don't know that I thought in real time that he necessarily graded out as a champion. I'd have to go back and watch the tape on that. But I thought he played well. But the fact that he was out there, and certainly Lathan is a legit option as a safety, I think his presence is felt out there. it was really, really nice to see him play. So I guess I was surprised, not just that he was able to play, considering until the last couple of days, I didn't think Lathan was going to be on the field, to him playing fairly well today. Yeah, definitely like that. Jordan Hancock had a good day. Denzel Burke, I thought, played fine, but I don't know that I watched a lot of Denzel like by myself, because I just felt like he wasn't around the ball a lot. They were working away from him, and that's fine. But it was good to see. It was good to see Lathan play as well as he did.
100%. 100%.
I know Anthony's on the West Coast at a family wedding. By the way, anybody that wants to drop comments in over the next couple of weeks here when Anthony's on the show, not that you need my permission, but please give Anthony a hard time about having not one, not two, but 3 family weddings in November. 3? Brutal from the Meglin.
I mean, that just means more good-looking shows because we'll both be on it. I mean,
clearly, that has to. It's the only logical takeaway. So yeah, I don't know at what point you and Megs will do a film breakdown. It might be on Monday because I think he's tied up on the West Coast here still tomorrow. But
I think the plan is Monday. Yeah.
Monday, cool. Well, can't wait to dive in with some film review there and plenty more reaction from a great game. Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. Boy, everybody went into this game saying Ryan Day has to win this game, and he got it done. A really good game plan from Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. The scheme was good. The execution was good. The leadership was terrific. They went into hostile territory and got it done, and the Buckeyes certainly are in the mix for a Big Ten title here moving forward. Plenty more to come over on si.com/college/Ohio State. So we certainly would appreciate if you check us out over there and subscribe to the YouTube channel along the way, where we have lots more video content just like this. For Kevin Woidke, I'm Brendan Gulick. Thanks for tuning in. Big win for the Bucks. They get it done in Happy Valley, 20-13.